So chances are when you cook your steak, you're probably doing something wrong. In this video, I'm gonna show you how I make the perfect steak every single time. I'm gonna give you guys some tips, some tricks, things to avoid. Let's go. All right, so one of the biggest questions for the home chef is, what's the best way to cook a steak? And the answer is, there's a ton of great ways to cook a steak. You could grill it, you could sous vide the steak, you could sear it in a pan and finish it with butter and herbs, you could just throw it straight into the oven, or you could do what I do, which I feel like is the most bulletproof way to get the perfect steak every time, and that is to get a nice hard sear on your steak and then finish it off in the oven. Rest assured, I'm gonna give you a step-by-step tutorial on how to do this and how to get it perfect every single time. I promise. Cooking a steak will be like riding a bike for you, but we gotta go over a couple things before we do that. So the first thing we're gonna go over is the cut of steak. All right, so when it comes to picking your cut of meat, it's all preference. Me personally, I like filet mignon. This is kind of like the cream of the crop on the cow. Super tender, super easy to cook, definitely a little bit more expensive, but I would say if you don't wanna go with the filet mignon because of the price, you can always go with the sirloin. This is kind of the common ground, most basic cut. This is the steak that you're gonna get when you go to places like Outback or Chili's. All right, next, let's talk about the temperature. All right, so the biggest argument when it comes to steak, without debate, is the temperature that people like it cooked. Some people like it well done, some people like it medium rare, right? So if we look over here at this graphic, as you can see, it's all determined by temperature. And if you like your steak a certain temperature or a certain doneness, all you gotta do is hit that number, and you just do that with a thermometer. So for example, medium rare, I like to get my steaks to 128, and that's the perfect medium rare for me. But let's say you like medium well. You just go down to medium well, you see the temperature that it needs to be, and you make sure your steak hits that temperature right in the middle, and it'll be perfect every time. All right, next we're gonna talk about the thickness of the steak and why that's important. Okay, so the reason why thickness matters of the steak, more so in this case than others, is because we have to think about how we're gonna cook this thing. So we're gonna hit it with a hard sear on the bottom, right? So that means we're gonna cook it up, just a little bit. So that much will cook of the steak. Then we flip it, and we do the same thing on this side, and it's gonna cook that much. We repeat on the sides, and we get the same result. Now, if you have a thick steak, think about it. You have all this room in between for a nice, juicy, medium rare, medium well, whatever you want, meat, right? So you have a lot more bang for your buck with the thicker steak. Now let's look at the sirloin. Obviously, I got a stubbier, thicker cut. That way it'll still come out beautifully for you guys. But look at the difference. When I go to put a hard sear on this sirloin, it's gonna cook, 20% of the bottom and 20% of the top, and it leaves very little room for us to have nice, juicy, tender meat inside. So the thicker the steak, the better. So if you wanna know what the one tool is to make a perfect steak every single time, it's this. It's a thermometer. Now I know there's a million different types of thermometers, and trust me, I've gone through the whole process myself. So first, we've got the probe monitor, probably the cheapest, a couple dollars, and you open the oven and you stick it in the steak, and then you wait for it to say what temperature it is. You let all the hot air out in the process, and if it's not up to temperature, you gotta close it, wait for the oven to get even hotter, and come to temperature. These, no go. Next, we've got the digital thermometer. And up until today, until we filmed this video, this is what I use. Now, of course, the issue is with the digital thermometer is it's a faster read, but you have to open the oven and check it, and that air comes out, and that just makes the cook time so much longer. So what I got instead of this is a Bluetooth oven-safe thermometer. So what does this do? You stick it in the steak, you leave it in the oven, you don't have to pull it out, you don't have to open the door and let all the hot air out, and it's Bluetooth, so it sends it to your iPhone or your Android, and it literally tells you exactly what temperature the inside of your steak is. I am so excited to use this thing. This is not sponsored by any means. I think we're gonna get the perfect cooked steak in the most efficient way possible with this thing, just because we're not gonna have to keep opening to make sure that that steak comes up to temperature. All right, the last thing we need to talk about before we get into actually making the steak is flavor. If you ask me, I'm a purist. I like salt and pepper on my steak. If you cook it perfectly, that steak will taste absolutely incredible. But I understand people out there like different flavor. This is more seasoning, so we're gonna give you more options. And my solution to that is compound butter. So what the hell is compound butter? Compound butter is literally butter mixed with ingredients that you want to get the desired flavor that you need. That's it. So I'm gonna show you 2 compound butters that I think would taste great on a steak. The first one, we're just gonna mix some butter with some minced garlic, a little bit of rosemary, some fresh chive, salt and pepper. The second one, we're gonna mix the butter with some more garlic, a little bit of basil, some sun-dried tomatoes, salt and pepper. And once you have your butter put together, all you're gonna do is throw it on some parchment paper, roll it into a log, tight on both sides, throw it into your freezer, and later on in this video, I will show you exactly what to do with it when you're ready. All right, we're about to hit the step-by-step process on how to make the bulletproof perfect steak every single time. And the first thing you need to do is pull your steaks out of the fridge, and we need to let these come to room temperature. We do not want to cook a steak that's hot on the outside and cold in the inside. Nobody wants a cold steak. So the best way to get the best cook on your steak is to pull it out for like 30 to 45 minutes and let it come to room temperature. Next, you're gonna wanna preheat your oven to 225 degrees. That way when the steak is ready to go in, the oven is ready. Let's go. All right, next, we're gonna hit these with a nice coat of salt and pepper on all surfaces because that is what is gonna give us our beautiful, flavorful crust. Just make sure you hit the top and the bottom with a nice coat of salt and pepper. And for the sides, just go ahead and slide them around the cutting board and pick up any of the stuff that hasn't stuck. You're gonna do the same exact thing for the sirloin as you did with the filet. All right, so our steak is completely seasoned. I've got a high smoke point oil like avocado or grapeseed in the pan. Show them real quick. You see that? That's a good little layer, and we are gonna get our heat on high, hot, very hot. When it starts to shimmer like that, that is when we are ready for that. And that's what you need to hear. Ah! Beautiful. Now, we're gonna let this cook on the fillets. Obviously, they're a lot thicker, so we can let this crust cook up just a little bit. So I'm gonna give this about 2 minutes. All right, so as you can see, we have got a beautiful crust right on top here, crust right on top of there, and we're just gonna let this cook for another 2 or so minutes just to get a nice thick crust on the other side. All right, so these thick fillets, I like all of them the sides to have a nice little sear. So I'm just gonna go ahead and flip these guys on their sides. Give that about 5 or 10 seconds, and we'll go ahead and flip to the next. Go ahead and flip to the next side. All right, so we have the crust on our fillets. That's great, but we also have to cook our sirloin, and it's a lot thinner, so it's gonna be the same exact process, just way shorter. So obviously this is a lot thinner, and we can see that crust starting to sneak up, so I don't wanna overcook it, so I'm just gonna go ahead and flip, even though it's only been about 45 seconds. We still got a little bit of a crust on there, all right? Now I'm just searing off those sides. All right, so I got my probe in and my app set up. Like I said, I like 128, the perfect medium rare. I'm gonna continue. I'm putting that in the oven. Fully insert the thermometer. Done. Okay, so we got our sear on it and it cooked it to 96 degrees, which means that it's still really rare inside, which is why we're gonna finish this in the oven. Okay, so the last thing you have to take into consideration when making the perfect steak is that thickness again, because this is gonna cook way faster than this, and this is going to cook faster than this. So this is going to come to temperature first. That's why I probed it in there, and then I will take the probe out when that one's ready and slide it in here and repeat. All right, so it's been about 8 minutes and I'm pretty happy with this. You can see it gives you like a line graph, a little line trending chart, and it just goes up as the temperature goes up. So we're at 126, we got 2 degrees to go. It's at 127, let's just wait to see what happens. Should be any second now, come on, give it to me. There we go. All right, it's finished cooking, removed from heat. So let's go and pull that sirloin out. All right, first things first, let's get it off this hot surface, bring it over here, and we need to let this rest for at least 5 minutes. Next, pull the probe out, but we still have to put it back into our filet, and this will go back into the oven. All right, I'm only gonna use one of these because I really like the flavor of this. Our filet's got about 60 seconds left, so I'm just gonna pop it on. Our steaks are cooked, they're fully rested, and just so you know, the reason we want to rest them is because when they're really hot, what happens is all that tissue in there, all those muscles, they get really, 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 really tight. And what happens is they push all the juice out, right? So what happens if you cut it as soon as it gets out of the oven, all that juice comes out and the steak is a little bit more dry. What happens when you give it a chance to rest is those muscles loosen up and that gives space for that juice to be reabsorbed and stay into the steak. So without any further ado, I'm gonna do a cut of our bulletproof steak. Let's go. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Look at this beautiful crust. It's literally like so thick, and that is just the perfect medium rare. Okay, this steak could literally not have turned out any more perfect. I'm just gonna give it a taste test. It's literally so juicy. The salt, the pepper. I mean, you see that, this is steak. You see how easily this is pulling apart? Steak. All right, so we gotta check the sirloin, right? Because the thickness, in theory, this should work perfectly with the sirloin as well. So let's do a cut. Look, even with the thinner steak, we still got that beautiful crust on top. It's still perfectly medium rare right in the middle. And of course, you can cook this to whatever temperature you want. Let's give it a taste test. Okay, last but not least, we gotta try our buttered one. Again, I mean, we don't even have to talk about it. It's perfectly cooked. Like, it's cooked to the temperature. You can't lose. Oh my God, bro. Oh, wow. Oh my God. Holy shit. So ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. The perfectly cooked steak every single time. It is bulletproof. Hey, if you like this video and the style of this video, let me know in the comment section below. Also, make sure you hit that like button and that subscribe button. I appreciate you guys watching. My name is Farnum. This is More Seasoning, and this is how to make the perfectly cooked steak every single time. We out. Bow.